Thanks so much for joining me on the Slice of Healthcare podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to speak. I know we've been kind of chatting back and forth for a while now. I'm glad we were both able to, separate some time and be able to hop on a podcast together. So I'm excited. I think we should dive right into it. If you could tell the audience about your background, I think that'd be a great start.
Let's do it. Yeah. So my background is in the healthcare space. As a consultant, I worked with the Gates Foundation on improving access to healthcare in developing countries. That's what I'm very passionate about. I did a lot of work in family planning, HIV, malaria. And at the time, I also met a couple of telehealth startups in Africa. And I just thought that telehealth was a very powerful way to improve access. And at the same time, I met my co-founder, Amy, at the time, who brought, a strong set of skills from direct to consumer and the same passion for healthcare. And so we decided to start Twentyeight together.
Perfect. And I have to ask too, right? So for the audience listening, where are you originally from?
I'm from Belgium in Europe.
Belgium.
So I've
Okay.
lived through a pretty different healthcare system than what we live in the US.
Yeah, it's I love when you just said malaria. The way that you said it. If I could say it every time like that, I know it's a horrible thing, but the way that you just said it, it sounded really cool. Interesting. Look, I'd love to quickly dive into that, and then we can go into talking about Twentyeight in more detail, why you started it, kind of how things work. But what like I guess advantage do you think it's given you, kind of being able to see these, like a lot of people, they're born either here in the US or somewhere else, but you saw two really different health systems. Do you think seeing those two different health systems and kind of being in it, actually that experience, seeing both those health systems, has helped you with your company today at all, or no?
Yeah, I do think a lot. I think it's a combination of things. I think that's one of them. It's actually the same for my co-founder, Amy, who is from Canada. So I think we've both sort of experienced with a different healthcare system, with how hard it is when we moved in here to navigate the system, and we're privileged people. So I can only imagine how it is for folks that have an even harder time. And so I think this is one piece. So for me, like, access has never been a question. And so that's a lot of the work I did at Gates, of how can we improve access for people irrespective of their color, of their income level, of their coverage, of where they live. And so that's the same experience that we wanted to bring to Twentyeight in the US. And the more we looked at it, the more we saw a massive need. I think if you look at number of people on Medicaid, number of people who are uninsured or underinsured, I think there's still a lot of work to do to improve access to women's health.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm always curious when I hear from people that, grew up somewhere else, they had exposure to like different health systems, like how I guess it just it either makes you appreciate certain things more too, right? Or also like, I can't believe we do things a certain way here. Interesting. I'd love to dive more into now the core business. So Twentyeight Health, can you tell us, I guess you gave us a quick intro, but why you decided to start it with your co-founder, how things work, and kind of just the I guess basic description, and then maybe a little more detailed if you can.
Of course, things are right. So why we started is really around need and the mission. I think we're both super passionate about increasing access to healthcare. There's a lot of work to do. If you take underserved women in the US, it's actually the majority of women. More than 60% of women are either on Medicaid, uninsured, or underinsured. If you look at the outcomes, I think the US has a long way to go in terms of an intended pregnancy rate, STI prevalence, maternal health outcomes, and those are just some initial examples. Those outcomes are even worse for people with lower income or people of color. And so that's what really got us excited to start something, because nobody was really looking at that market. And it's still the case today. Like, you see a lot of players who do very important work, but I think there's very few digital health players focused on the Medicaid population and the underserved population in general. So that's what got us started. So that's really the core of our mission. Our mission is to increase access to reproductive and sexual health that's inclusive of underserved communities. Tactically, we offer telemedicine, medication delivery, and ongoing messaging for doctors. we started with birth control, but we want to be a comprehensive women's health platform. So we'll go all the way from contraception to menopause. And you will see actually in the next few months, we'll be launching, products outside of the contraceptive space. And we're also expanding across the country. So we're still in 6 states today, but we'll be launching many, many more states in the next few weeks.
Perfect. That's exciting.
Yeah.
What are some of the things, I guess, you're most excited about as we head into 2021? 2020 was a crazy year. I guess both in terms of just general well-being for the country as a whole, but also just towards your company. Like, what do you now the answer could be everything, right? And that's not a bad answer either, but I guess if you had to focus in on a few things, what are you really excited about this year?
Yeah, so let me tell you about, I think, 2 parts. One is sort of what gets us excited about the space in general, and then I think what gets us excited about Twentyeight. So I think, first of all, I think one of the tailwind of COVID is that people started to use telemedicine more. I think they started to trust it, and our view is that telemedicine will not replace the healthcare system, but can become an important part of it, and one of the options that people can use to get the care that they need. And so one thing we're really excited about is to have seen people using and accepting more telehealth. We have seen, I think, more and more companies coming with really high standard of care that they can provide online. And we're seeing also regulators. I think we're seeing regulators, not just during COVID, but New York, for example, a few weeks ago just passed a law where, video consultation will be reimbursed for doctors at the same rate as in-person consult. And that's important, right? Because if doctors are not able to get the reimbursement they're used to, then they will not really make the switch. So, and across the board, we have seen most states developing, regulations around telemedicine. So I think that's really good. And when it comes to our company, a few things we're super excited about. I mentioned we'll be launching new products. So we'll be building that full platform and not just a birth control player. I think we will be launching a lot of new partnerships. So we partner with nonprofits, with other brands. We are, we're in discussions with payers and providers, and then also expanding across the country. Like, we want to have the largest impact possible. So initially we focus on a few set of states to really get our user experience right. And now I think we have that, and we're really kind of, pushing the next gears to expand across the US.
Exciting. That's really exciting. Yeah, it's you have a really interesting background too. I feel so when I was first looking at your profile, when we were kind of putting together, you coming on the podcast, I think it's a huge advantage that you were at Boston Consulting Group in the past, and I'm sure the experience. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure the experience that you had there is definitely helping you with running this business and understanding the landscape to a high level. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say. I think it's there are some advantages. I think there are definitely also some gaps. I think the knowledge of the healthcare system that I was able to gain, I think that was definitely a good head start. It also gives credibility, right, to be able to say that you worked at the Gates Foundation and at BCG when you raise your first couple of rounds, when you build your team. The network that you get, I think, is a lot of our first hires or advisors were either from direct network or facilitated by people that we knew. And then I think one thing that I heard you on a lot of other interviews also speak about is the need for focus. I think when you start a business, you have like a thousand ideas, every day you have new ones, and it's really about focus. If you want to get something out there that works, you can only pick a few. And so I think that's a lot of things that I learned, but was also missing a lot of important skills. I had limited knowledge of the direct to consumer space, marketing, tech. So my co-founder Amy brought a lot of that experience from running a DTC startup. And then we also tried to kind of outsource or use freelancers for what we needed on top of that. But yeah, a lot of it was helpful. I think something that also gets me really excited is the team. I forgot to mention, but that's probably the number one thing that gives me a lot of energy. despite COVID, like we put some interesting engagement models in place. We do daily all hands. We, play a little game every Thursday. We did some events, and we have a really, a really strong team of dedicated folks, and we're hiring a few more. So that's also, more than a few more. We're hiring a bunch of new people, and that's very fun.
Exciting. Yeah, it's I always when I talk with other entrepreneurs, we talk through. I think it's a common thing, whether it's the first venture or a couple ventures in. Entrepreneurs are known to have what a mentor of mine used to say. We have like entrepreneurial like ADD. Like if we don't focus in on something, we could come up with ideas all day long, right? Of like, oh, this would be cool, this would be cool, but then we just have a sheet full of ideas and no execution behind it. But yeah, so you're right. Focus is a huge thing, and I'm sure, like you said, there's parts of you working at like BCG and working at the working at the was it you said was it the Gates Foundation? Yeah.
Yes.
That helped, but then also like at the end of the day, just I'm sure most of your experience, like I know for me, the best things I've learned are when I've actually just done it myself and not actually worked for the company that was like, when you have to do it and you either like fail or succeed as a result of you doing it, that's when it like really sticks in, right? And you learn a lot. Cool.
That's right. And I think you learn a lot, like a ton. Like I think what I learned the past years is it's different skill set, but it's incomparable with what I learned before. A lot, exactly what you said, a lot more by kind of doing, learning, failing yourself. And indeed it sticks. But I think it's fun. It's really fun. I think the combination of like learning yourself, but also I think sometimes it's nice to kind of learn from the best. And that's something we're trying to combine. We're also pretty lucky to have a few friends that did ventures before, and so we rely on like pretty amazing advisors that guide us along the way, and that I think that played a big part to our early success.
Perfect. I'm excited to also let's try to have Amy come on at some point too. This is not going to be our last podcast, right? This is what we talked about as the intro podcast. We want to have you on several more times to kind of focus in on certain areas of your business that I know you would love to talk about and Amy would love to talk about, and maybe other members of your team, but I know our audience would be interested in hearing those focus points as well.
Of course, I think the more the better for us. Anytime.
Perfect. I'm excited. Where can people learn more about you and your organization?
Yeah, so a few things. So first of all, they can come on our website, 28health.com, all spelled out. We're on LinkedIn, we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we're on Twitter. We're getting more and more press coverage. So I think we got pretty lucky with some Forbes, some TechCrunch articles, this podcast, other podcasts. And one thing I do want to point, we're also recruiting for some really interesting roles that I think might be relevant for your audience. So we are looking for a head of business development. That's super exciting, working on partnerships with payers and providers. We're always looking for physicians to join the team. We're also looking for a partnership and marketing manager, and then also growing the tech team. So if there's anybody listening to the podcast that's interested, just go and look it up. Click on the careers and feel free to apply. And then we also are building partnerships with, as I mentioned, colleges, nonprofits. We're trying to go where people are, especially our sort of target population, the people who struggle to have access. So that's also a lot of the ways that people can learn about us.
Perfect. Great. Well, thanks again for coming on the podcast. We'll let everyone know.
Thanks so much, Jared.